China is refusing to apologise for that controversial image posted on social media attacking Australian soldiers in the wake of a war crimes report. The fake photo, tweeted by a Beijing official, shows an Australian soldier holding a knife to the throat of an Afghan child. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has labelled the image repugnant, demanding an official apology. China has doubled down on its attack, saying the Australian government should be ashamed given the nature of the war crime allegations.
Afghan lives matter. The Australian government should bring the culprits to justice and offer an official apology to the Afghan people and make the solemn pledge that they will never repeat such crimes.
And Heston Russell is a retired Special Forces commander and he joins me now. Heston Russell, welcome. So as a former Special Forces commander, how did you feel when you saw that image yesterday?
Well, like all Australians, it was pretty disgusting to see that. For one, our troops portrayed in a way that is so offensively, and two, the clear propaganda attack that's been waged by China utilising Twitter as a platform for that.
And what about the fact that the Chinese government won't back down now? Because this was it was an official, but a relative, like a junior official who initially tweeted it. But now the Chinese government has been taken to task on it, and it is not backing down.
No, I don't think they're going to back down. I mean, at the moment we're seeing trade sanctions heavily embarked upon us. We're seeing our naval forces committed to manoeuvres in the South China Sea. We're seeing alleged cyber attacks. You know, this is all part of the Chinese Communist Party machine, and now we're seeing these propaganda attacks, and they're simply taking the most of the hospital pass that the Prime Minister has set in his handling of this IGADF inquiry report release.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we heard the Prime Minister come out and call this report condemning brutal truths, and then the Chief of Defence Force come out in 6 days and conduct broad brush punishment of all those who haven't yet been proven guilty in a court of law, as is our democratic values. So the government and the Defence Department has now backtracked on those, but as they do so, the Chinese Communist Party is now waging a propaganda attack to exploit the wedge that they've already put within our population and on the international scale.
So you don't believe the Prime Minister and the Chief of Defence Force have handled the run-up to this report, the release of the report, and the actual release of the report well at all?
Well, we're seeing that now. I mean, we're seeing now the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, overrule the Chief of the Defence Force in asking him to make changes. We're seeing the Defence Department scramble to put together an implementation plan that should have been implemented prior to this report coming out. We're seeing these decisions being made and then backtracked. So there's been a lack of cohesion, a lack of strategic leadership. And unfortunately, that's now being exploited on an international scale by those who would at the moment mean to do us harm economically, financially, and now within the moral fabric of our society.
And when you see images like this, Heston, and I'm sure you're reminded of your time over there in Afghanistan, how do you feel about what's happened over the past couple of months in terms of Australia's perception of what happened over there and the government's handling of this?
I'm so deeply disappointed as a veteran on so many levels. You know, this report and this inquiry is absolutely critical to uphold those same values and allow these processes to occur and justice to be brought where it's required. But at the same time, we're now forcing the Australian public to make an opinion of our special forces as at 7 years ago without any information being put through the government other than what they're seeing in the media. We're seeing Australian Afghan communities in Queensland being attacked because the Australians up there, or some of the Australians up there who are responding in a bad way, don't know how to react. We're seeing Afghan people in Afghanistan being targeted by the Taliban who believe that they will be receiving reparations in response to the government's announcement. We have not seen the deliberate military appreciation process or planning process applied to the government's response to this, and are now seeing the second and third order effects and the collateral damage they have caused by knee-jerk reactions.
Do you concede, though, that the allegations are horrific and they need to be investigated?
Absolutely. These allegations are extremely confronting, and the fact that the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has stepped up the Office of the Special Investigator to do a criminal investigation is excellent and now needs to be allowed to do its due course.
So, but how should the Prime Minister and the CDF have handled this in a different way?
Well, first and foremost, the Prime Minister and CDF should have collaborated and put together an implementation plan before releasing it, as opposed to now, like they're scrambling to do. It sounds to me like the Prime Minister should have engaged with his Afghan counterparts to figure out what the best form of reparations would have been to the Afghan people, as opposed to what we're being told that wasn't conducted. They should have engaged with the Afghan community. They should engage with the current veteran community. They should have engaged with the families of the fallen before announcing on the media, being the first time they heard any of these conversations or announcements. They went straight to the media, established a powerful position, which now we're seeing more than 65,000 Australians have joined our petition at voiceofaveteran.org and are now pushing forward this common sense campaign to make sure that they're held accountable to their mistakes.
Yeah. And so it sounds like from this statement released by the CDF overnight that he's walking back on the strength of his language around the meritorious citation unit, meritorious unit citation being withdrawn from the thousands of soldiers who were in Afghanistan in that initial period.
Yes.
What did you read into that statement overnight?
Well, even then, Joe, unfortunately, we're seeing this language that is saying no decisions have been made yet. We're not addressing it directly. What needs to happen is the Chief of Defence Force, General Campbell, needs to come and said, hey, I acted too quickly. I am not going to be writing to the Governor-General. I'm going to allow due process to occur. I'm going to allow the case-by-case assessments and investigations that are recommended otherwise in the report to occur. What we're hearing is political language by our senior military general, who we need leadership from and decisive action and demonstration of competence. So I want to see some more stronger language in what is actually going to occur from this point forward.
And how did you feel about how, up to this stage, how those higher up in the chain of command have been held responsible for the management of the situation that developed there in Afghanistan? And we had Angus Campbell at that initial media conference on the release of the report saying, yeah, it makes me wonder what I walked past. How did you feel about how that's been handled?
I love this. The standard you walk past is the standard you set. So what he walked past while he was still awarded a Distinguished Service Cross for his command in action, while he was still responsible for overseeing the administration of all those elements that deployed to Afghanistan, including the Special Forces task groups that deployed continuously on waivers for reduced time back at home, who were deployed with time so they didn't receive any relief in place in country, time and time again performing roles that even this report says they shouldn't have been doing, could have been done by other forces, but the government didn't want the risk of higher casualties. All these things are actually those strategic decisions that fall on his shoulders to report back to Australia, let alone these alleged tactical actions that occurred on the ground that he walked past and didn't see.
And taking into account the Australian experience over the decades with returned Australian soldiers, and particularly mentioning Vietnam, how important is the handling of this now? What's the feeling within the return services community about where the reputation is at now? Yeah,
well, I had a very great fear that this was going to harm our reputation, and I've been so spurred by the support we've seen from the Australian public so far. But I would just like to make the critical note that what the Australian public is now seeing is the mismanagement of our defence personnel, particularly our returned veterans, that's been occurring for the last 20 years, with now over 600 veterans having committed suicide post the commencement of our conflict in Afghanistan, because our generals don't know what's going on the ground, they don't know what they're walking past, they're not acting and they're not listening to us, and veterans are being affected by decisions like this in the public media without even having any form of proactive mental health plan in place to support them.
And so how important is it that a decision is made soon on these awards for the thousands of soldiers? It sounds like there's going to be a lengthy process before there is any decision.
Well, absolutely. The Burden report has gone on for 4.5 years already, and all that we need as a veteran community now is to hear the Prime Minister and the Chief of Defence Force come out and say, hey, we are not going to make any decisions now. We are going to let the Office of the Special Investigator conduct its investigation, and once that has gone through the court processes, we will make decisions after that. We just need to settle and calm the veteran community, settle and calm the Australian public who are being forced to have these opposing opinions, and just help us focus on things that we need to, like these attacks that are now coming from overseas within our social media channels.
Okay, Heston Russell, thanks so much for coming and having a chat to us.
Joe, thanks for having me on ABC.